Yes, it is recording. Okay, great. Okay, guys, so again, welcome to the class. I do apologize for coming a bit late, but I'd like to start by showing you the course calendar, guys. Today is the 27th of April, so we are over here. We are in week 11 at the moment, guys, and today, inshallah, we will talk a bit about poetry, and then we will dive into today's poem, which is all about, this is the beautiful poem written by Elizabeth Bishop, and the title of the poem is One Art, okay? If you guys remember, last time I saw you, we did talk about Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. We actually finished talking about that. Remember, guys, Up From Slavery is not really a story. It's more of an autobiography. Okay, it's more of like it's basically like a real account. It's not fiction. It's actually everything the guy mentions in the account or like in the text are things that actually happened to this person. So it's an autobiography. It's a true account of someone's life. Yeah. So we did that last week, and today we're going to cover, in today's class, we're going to cover the first poem we have this semester, which is One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. I hope that you guys had the chance to read it. It's a beautiful short poem. It's a bit depressing, like most of the texts that we have in this course. But you know, this is the first poem we're going to cover, and then next week we're going to cover the second poem we have, which is Stopping by Woods, by the American poet Robert Frost. And then the last thing we have is the play by Susan Glaspell. It's called Trifles. It's an amazing play. As I told you before, it's my wife's favorite play because the man gets killed in it, or the man dies. So any text, any literature, any poem or text or story where a man gets killed, my wife is always a big fan of that. Okay, and guys, also don't forget that next week we have our second quiz, inshallah, as well. Our second quiz is going to cover the text Up From Slavery, the autobiography Up From Slavery, and it will also cover today's class, which is the short poem by Elizabeth Bishop, One Art. Okay, guys? So I just wanted to show you the course calendar just to kind of remind you of what we have. We're almost at the end of the semester, so we don't really have much left. But yeah, just keep this in mind because, as I said, guys, for next week, inshallah, when you come to class, please be prepared for the quiz. And the quiz will be very similar to the first one you guys did. Most of the questions are going to be multiple choice. I might give you a few short answer questions, just writing a sentence, nothing more than that. I won't ask you to write a paragraph or an essay. Okay, guys? So, I hope that you guys had the chance to read the poem. Before we talk about the poem, of course, I'd like to talk a bit about poetry. Okay, poetry, yes? If you have any questions, if you want to speak, please raise your hand. Yes, someone's raising their hand already. Is it Ahmed? I'm guessing, is it Ahmed? Oh, it's Muhammad. Muhammad, go ahead.
I can't see the screen for some reason. It's showing it's black.
Oh, you don't see anything?
Yeah, anything. It's totally black.
Oh wow, can you log out and then come back in, Muhammad?
I did once. Let me try to close Teams.
Okay. Sure. Thank you, Muhammad. Okay, so yeah, where are we? We're over here. Yes, I'm going to open this, guys. I hope you can see it on your screens. I don't know why Muhammad couldn't see my screen. Maybe it's an issue just with his phone or like his device. And I hope that this problem is only with him, not with everybody else. Okay, let's hope this opens. Okay, guys, so as I said, before I talk about the poem, guys, we're going to have a small discussion about poetry in general, okay? What is poetry and what do you know about poetry and so on and so forth, okay? Okay. Okay, guys, so first things first, as I said, guys, before we talk about the short poem we're going to cover today, guys, let's talk a bit about poetry, right? Can anyone tell me, again, if you know the answer, guys, just please raise your hand. Just try. Even if you don't know, guys, just, give it a try. In your opinion, what is poetry? What do you know about poetry? Any ideas? Muhammad, yes, go ahead. Alaikum salam.
Poetry is something we called it, it will be short feeling.
Okay. A short feeling, you mean?
You are giving some hints and you not short feeling, short sentence to show the meaning.
Oh, nice.
Show the feeling.
Okay.
Short sentence, and you accept the listener or the reader will understand your mind.
Excellent. Nice. Very nice. Exactly. So as Muhammad said, yes, a poem, if you want, is like, as Muhammad said, you have like short sentences, and like in those sentences, you show the feelings. You show how you truly feel. Yes, that's true. Arzak?
Yes, doctor. Poetry is like the writer tries to write his feelings or something that he feels,
Mm-hmm.
but in stanza and using tone and metaphor and something like that.
Yeah.
And simile, like they don't use direct words. They
Mm-hmm.
use always simile and metaphor.
Exactly. Yeah.
Other things.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, thank you, Arzak. Exactly, good point. So Arzak mentioned a few things because, again, I think most of you understand that poetry is beautiful, right? But the question is, what makes poetry beautiful? Why is poetry, generally speaking, why is it more beautiful, or let's say more romantic, or why do we have more feelings in poetry rather than short stories or plays, for example? So we'll get to that question later. What makes poetry beautiful? Okay. If you want a short definition, guys, this is a good short definition for poetry. Okay. So what is poetry, guys? Poetry is a concise form. The word concise basically means it's like a short. So poetry is a short form of text that is written in lines and sometimes grouped into stanzas. I think Muhammad mentioned this, and I think Arzak also mentioned this as well, right? So what is a stanza, guys? It's, again, if you think of when you're writing a short story, you write in sentences, and these sentences are grouped into paragraphs, right? When you're writing a short story. But in poetry, we don't have sentences and paragraphs. We have lines, and these lines are actually sometimes grouped into stanzas. Okay, so a group of lines or a group of lines in poetry is actually called stanzas. Okay, and another difference between poetry, let's say, and fiction is that the language is usually more artistic. It's more indirect, and there is more emphasis on rhyme and rhythm. Okay, so again, why is poetry more, generally speaking, more beautiful than fiction, or it's more beautiful than, let's say, for example, plays and drama? It's because number one, the language is more artistic, it's more indirect, and of course we have more emphasis. There is more, and you will clearly see in a poem that you have something called rhythm and rhyme. Okay. So poetry is the genre of rhythmic writing filled with imagery that evokes an emotional response from the reader. Sometimes when you read a poem, actually, sometimes when you give a good poem to people, sometimes they get affected, they get moved. And actually, if you ask people who write poetry, why did you end up writing this poem? They will tell you something within me moved. You understand? So something shook me, something affected me so much, I actually had to put my pen to paper and I actually had to write a poem. So this genre of literature is for exciting the mind with beautiful, imaginative, or elevated thoughts. Okay, guys? And again, of course, I'll give you some examples. I'll show you how beautiful poetry can be. Yep. So, because the language in poetry is deeper and more indirect, it is normal to not understand everything in the first reading. So, guys, you have to keep this in mind. And think about it, right? Sometimes people tell me, Mr. Farran, I read the poem, I didn't really understand. It's okay to not understand the poem when you read it the first time, because, again, as we said, in poetry, the language is actually more indirect. It's more imaginative. It's more, we have things like similes and metaphors and puns and so on and so forth. So because the language is more it's not natural, it is okay to not understand the poem when you read it the first time. You actually, to get a better understanding of the poem, you actually have to read it more than once. Okay? It says here, poetry is an experience produced by two elements of language. So there are two very important things when it comes to poetry. We have sense and sound. Sense is meaning, and sound is, of course, it's related to how the poem sounds, basically. And this is where we have rhythm and rhyme. Okay. So because sound is important in poetry, it is often hard to translate poems into other languages without losing some of their impact or beauty. Right? Think about this for a second, guys. If you want to translate a short story from English to Arabic, you can do so without any problem. It's fine. But when it comes to translating poetry or poems from one language to another, it's actually 10 times more difficult. Why? Because you can translate the sense and you can translate the meaning, but it is usually impossible to translate the exact sounds. Right? Actually, in some languages, you have sounds that don't even exist in other languages. For example, the sound p in English does not even exist in Arabic. Right? And so on and so forth. So when it comes to translating poetry from one language to another, sometimes it's super hard. It's actually extremely hard because you cannot translate the sounds. You can't get the same sounds. You can translate the meaning, but you can't really get the same sounds, okay? Most of the things that you hear or read in your daily life put more emphasis on meaning than on sound. That is not the case with poetry. So guys, when you think about it, most of the things, if you're reading a newspaper, you're reading a magazine, you're reading a short story, right? You're watching a movie, or like you're reading a good book, usually we don't really care about the sounds, okay? We care more about meaning. But in poetry, that is not the case. In poetry, we actually care about both. We care about the meaning and also how this poem sounds, okay? There are two very important things when it comes to poetry. We have something called denotation and something called connotation. Does anyone know, before I show you the, before I explain this, does anyone know the difference between denotation and connotation? Think about it. If I say, for example, if you think of a rose, for example, right? Think of a rose. What is the dictionary definition of a rose? If you open a dictionary and you check out the word rose, yes? What will you find in the dictionary?
It's a flower. It's a kind of flower.
Okay, great. It's a kind of flower, exactly, yes?
Okay, great. It's kind of flower, exactly, yes.
And Muhammad, so Arzak said the denotation of a rose is a flower. What about the connotations? What words do you associate with flowers, Muhammad?
Beauty, nice. It's meaning the meaning.
Exactly.
Where can you use it? Yes, you can use it in different way.
Exactly. Good point.
Like
Yes.
if we said Snow White, we didn't mean the white color. No, we mean it's a beauty girl.
Nice. That's nice. Exactly. Good point, Muhammad. Yes. So as Arzak said the flower. If you open a dictionary, you will find that it's a plant. And as Muhammad mentioned, the connotations, the words that come with a rose are of course things like something which is beautiful, right? So if I say my wife is a rose, I don't mean that my wife is a plant. You understand? I don't mean that my wife is actually a plant. I mean that my wife is beautiful like a rose. I have to give you these examples now because I'm teaching from the house. I can't make fun of my wife. Yes, Muhammad, go ahead.
We can describe something also like with something reddish.
Something reddish.
Description for a color. Yeah, like a description for a color.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
can use it as well, right?
Very good, exactly. Yes, we can use colors as symbols as well, as Muhammad mentioned. Muhammad, can you see the screen now?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, the two things that I talked about, guys, denotation, connotation, are very important, and you will see that in poetry we have a lot of connotations. If I say my wife is like a rose, I don't mean that she is a plant. I mean that she is as beautiful as a rose. Yeah. So the denotation is a literal meaning, or like a dictionary definition. It's exactly what you say, right? The connotations, they are the words, they are the emotions, and the associations connected to a word. Okay. So connotation creates imagery or pictures for readers in their minds. For example, if I say a wedding ring. Imagine I'm standing imagine that we're all in class right now, and I hold up my wedding ring. Yeah. So the denotation of a wedding ring is what? It's a ring, right? Or it's like a piece of jewelry that people wear on their finger, right? This is the denotation. If you check out a ring in the dictionary, it's going to tell you it's a piece of metal or whatever. It's an accessory that you wear around your ring. Okay. Around your finger, right? Now, what are the connotations? What are some of the connotations of a ring? Okay, Muhammad, yes, go ahead.
It means you are married and you are loyal to your wife.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So wedding rings, as Muhammad mentioned, can represent loyalty, sacrifice, love, right, and so on. Arzak, what else?
It's an object that you use to refer to something emotionally relative to.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah. Do you think, Arzak, the meaning of the ring changes with time, or does it stay the same?
It may change.
Okay.
Depend on the relationship or the emotional things that happen with the ring.
Okay.
It's not always marriage. Like, I don't think that the ring is always about marriage.
What could it
Maybe
represent?
something else. Not always. I don't know. I will not in the class.
Okay. Yeah, so I have to keep my voice down, but yeah, so as Arzak said, yeah, maybe it doesn't have to symbolize marriage. Maybe it could symbolize admiration, love, connection, maybe friendship.
Maybe a friendship.
Subhanallah, there you go. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Dawood, yes, go ahead. Dawood, yes, can you hear me?
Oh, okay, sorry, I forgot the microphone. I was just saying that in the dictionary in general, we can have a lot of words that holds the same definition, but when it comes to connotation, they can actually mean something else. For example, the word cheap and affordable, they can have the same definition in a dictionary, but it can lean more towards more feelings when it comes to negativity or positivity in the word itself.
Good point. Very good, exactly. Yeah, so something which is affordable and something which is cheap as well. So you can one of them has a more negative connotation. The word cheap has a more negative, connotation, right? If you call someone cheap, or if someone is cheap, then they are frugal. They don't like to spend their money, and of course, people are not usually attracted to someone who's cheap, right? If you think again, if I go back to the wedding ring or like a ring, right? In the beginning, when you get married, for example, this ring represents love, sacrifice, commitment, loyalty, and so on, right? You are just in love with this person, and you physically wear something around your ring to tell people that, you know what, you're committed, you are loyal to this person, you are taken, you are off the market. That's like the first few years of marriage, or maybe the first few months. But then after that, I have to keep my voice down. But after that, guys, sometimes the meaning changes. And imagine 10 years after marriage, right? This ring, the same ring that represented loyalty and love and hope, that same ring can sometimes represent fear, imprisonment, depression. You understand? If you don't know what I'm talking about, just get married and you will see. Okay? Yeah. So let me go back to the examples I have over here. So again, guys, denotation, connotation, right? Remember, denotation is the dictionary definition. Connotations are basically the associations or the feelings or the emotions that come with these words. And you will see that these things are very, very popular, especially in poetry. Okay. For example, let's take this example, right? You see the image on your screen. What is the denotation? If you open a dictionary and you search for like a bird or like a dove or a pigeon, what is the dictionary definition of a bird or a pigeon? Okay, Muhammad, yes, go ahead.
I guess it symbolizes peace.
Before peace, Muhammad, what is the dictionary definition? So if you open a dictionary and you check out you check out a bird, or like you try to find the definition of a bird or a dove, what do you get, Muhammad?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what's dictionary.
You're not sure? Okay, so okay, if I ask you, Muhammad, what is a bird?
Birds?
Yeah. If you have to define it, what is a
Yeah,
bird?
a peaceful animal who can fly, and they are just doing their own business. They're not harmful. Yeah, they are so beautiful. They are so beautiful. Also.
Okay, they're beautiful. So okay, so again, beautiful is the connotation. So birds are beautiful. But again, if you open a dictionary, let's see if maybe Arzak can help you. Arzak, if you open a dictionary, what will you get?
In a dictionary, a bird is a kind of animal
Okay.
that flies, and there's a lot of kinds and types of this bird.
Okay.
That's in dictionary.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Uh, But
True.
in the other side, in the other side of the connotation, there's another meaning of
Uh-huh.
The pigeon or the bird,
What
which
are-
is peace. That we all know it's peace.
Okay.
A white pigeon, it means that peace.
Okay. So again, so Arzak said, so for the denotation, it's just if you open dictionary, it's a bird, it's an animal that flies, for example. And then Arzak said for the connotation, a bird can represent peace. Okay. Dawood, do you agree?
Yes, it is also the way you describe the thing, like the head size, the tail. That is also considered a denotation.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah. So if you look up the definition for a dove or a pigeon or a bird, you might get something like this. It's a seed or fruit-eating bird with a small head, short legs, and a cooing voice. Coo, coo. You understand? Yeah, I make very good bird impressions. Okay. Now let's think of the connotations, right? Think of the connotations. So when you think of a white bird or like a white dove or a white pigeon, what comes to your head? So yes, Arzak said freedom. That's true. What else? Anyway, what other words or emotions come to your head when you think of a white bird or like a white pigeon? Yes, Dawood?
Well,
Yes, Lincoln.
in Christianity, usually they connect it to the Holy Spirit. I mean, I'm not getting religious here, just so you know.
Okay, so they connected to the Holy Spirit. Yeah, so it's like in some religions, they yeah, it's connected to the Holy Spirit. Specifically in Christianity, as Dawood mentioned. Muhammad, yes.
Mr. Dawood, you're right. I think the same. But another thing, if you are talking about vision, it is some kind. It means you are comfortable. You are feeling comfortable.
Mm-hmm. You're comfortable. Okay.
Security and security and safety.
Exactly. Security, safety. Very nice. Yes, I like. Good. Exactly, Muhammad. Yes. Someone called themselves Rose. Sorry, who is Rose again? Rose, double Rose.
Yes, it's me. It's me, Doctor.
Who are you? Sorry again. What's your name?
Yes, my name is Marahab.
Oh, Marahib. Sorry, yes, Marahib. Okay. Are you calling yourself Rose because I talked about roses, or are you calling yourself?
No, this is my iCloud.
Uh,
I don't know why my name was
okay, I thought you were calling yourself Rose after the movie from the movie Titanic. I was going to break my desk.
Okay, maybe.
Marahib. So yeah, Marahib. When you think of birds, when you think of a white bird, what words come? Yeah.
I think of birds. It's for peace or something good because its color is white. I think its color.
Mm-hmm.
From my imagine, I think the color and bird, it's only the peace.
Okay, peace. Yeah, that's true. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, yeah, again, so some of the meanings that you guys gave me, some of the connotations that you guys gave me are actually true. If you actually think of a bird, if you think of a white, specifically a white bird, so white birds or let's say white pigeons are actually associated with things like, again, as Marahab mentioned, peace, love, as also Muhammad and Dawood mentioned, peace, love, innocence, freedom, tranquility, tenderness, right? And that's why sometimes in weddings you see people releasing white birds into the sky. I actually also saw a video from Palestine where a prisoner was released and the prisoner's mother released a white bird into the sky. Because obviously, birds are free to fly, so birds represent freedom. You understand? So a white bird is symbolic, represents things like peace, love, innocence, freedom, tranquility, tenderness, and so it's something positive. That's why you sometimes see birds in weddings when a prisoner is released, and so on and so forth. Okay, and also the color. I think Muhammad mentioned this before, but guys, remember, color is also very symbolic. So guys, think of white and black, for example, right? Again, I don't know. I might sound like a racist here, but again, I'm not a racist. But again, the meanings we attach to colors are sometimes they are clear. For example, like in the Arab world, when you think of the color white, right? When you think of the color white, what comes to your mind? What words come to your mind? Okay, Muhammad, yes.
Peace, free, but also maybe one can see it like a new life because most of the wedding, the bride always wears white. Also,
That's true.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Yeah. The other Muhammad.
So the white color always mean the good thing.
That's true.
If you are taking two choices, be white, white thing, white place, white ideas, and the opposite. If you are talking about the dark or black, black day, black idea, dark day, it always be the bad thing, bad idea.
True, exactly. Yes, it sounds. When you think about it logically, it sounds a bit racist. I think the person who came up with these ideas, he was a bit prejudiced. He didn't really like black people. I think he probably.
Even we are white or black people, doesn't matter. We are thinking about minds or thinking.
But why?
It's the same.
But why is it Muhammad?
Even the black guy will say, "Oh, it's Black Day. It's very bad." The same.
But why is it that everything that is good is associated with the color white, and why is everything sad and angry and bad associated with the color black?
Maybe from our religion we have this traditions, ظلمات والنور, something like that.
Okay, that could be a reason. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, good point, Hamid. Dawood?
I don't think that what he's saying is actually true because actually the color white can also be associated with the surrendering flag, which is white.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good point, Dawood. Yes, exactly. That's a good point. If you think of, for example, if you're watching a boxing match and the coach sees that his fighter is getting pummeled, he might get injured. The coach might throw in a white towel, right? And also, if you saw videos of the Saddam soldiers surrendering when they invaded Kuwait, you will see a lot of them were actually they were like waving like a white flag, or they were like waving their white shirts up in the sky. And white can also be symbolic, as Dawood mentioned. White can also be symbolic of surrender or giving up or being a coward, for example. But generally speaking, when you think of the color white, we think of something positive. We think of innocence. We think of beauty. We think of pureness. And unfortunately, when we think of the color black, we think of something dark, something negative. Think of, for example, again, as someone mentioned, women wear, for example, white when it comes to weddings. They wear like their dream is to wear a white wedding dress, for example. And when we go to a funeral, a lot of the times we don't wear bright colors. We tend to wear black colors. Like we tend to wear something dark to represent our sadness. So black can also represent things like depression, sadness, and so on. And that's why, by the way, that's why in marriage women wear white and men wear black. Now you know why. Okay. Marahab, yes, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, doctor. I think the white is clear and sparkling, or clarity of mind. I think the bride in her wedding should dress white for the sparkling and peace
Mm-hmm.
and I like this.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point,
yes,
Marahab. Exactly. So white represents purity. White represents
yes,
cleanliness.
purity and beauty. Yes,
That's so true, yeah. And I think again, maybe again, I'm not too sure of the origins of why we use these colors. Is it because of our religion, as Muhammad mentioned? Is it because this was passed on to us from colonization and so on? Because again, if we think of these standards of beauty, these standards of beauty are heavily influenced by the Western culture. If you think of the typical Barbie, if I ask you right now to think of a typical Barbie, you can find in a store, or if you go to a toy shop, the standard skin color of a Barbie is a thin white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, right? Whereas maybe in Africa, if you go to Africa, maybe that is not the standard of beauty. Like like in the Arab world, like even like in Egypt, we say يعني نهار أسود, right? We say when we're having a bad day, you say and you call the day a black day. So again, is this like did we like inherit these ideas from other cultures? I'm not really too sure about the history of them, but again, it's interesting to note that by the way, the associations we give to colors, they are culture specific, which means different cultures associate different meanings to the same colors. For example, the color red is very interesting. The color red can represent love, but the color red can also represent something which is dangerous. If you think of hell or hellfire, you think of the devil, they're all red, right? So red can represent danger, red can represent hell, red can represent the devil, for example, but red can also represent your heart. If you think of Valentine's Day, you know how like in Kuwait, how people start, these creepy guys start putting like red stickers on their cars on the 14th of Feb. They're trying to be romantic. So red is a very interesting color. But I think in the Middle East, red has a more kind of it's more cautious. It's more be careful, right? If you look at these signs, right, mamnua, no smoking, no smartphones, whatever. You will always see that they're always colored in red. So, for example, the Middle East, red could be a color which represents danger. But if you go to China, for example, in China, red is a very popular color. Red is a color that brings good luck, right? If you've ever been to a Chinese restaurant, you will see red almost everywhere. You will see red on the walls, red on the decor. They have their flag is red. They have the Chinese dragons, which are usually red as well. So again, the meanings we associate with colors depends from culture to culture, right? What is dangerous or depressing for one culture could be something pure and innocent for another culture, right? So again, guys, denotation, connotation. As I said, you will see the importance of connotations in poetry. Okay, a lot of the times in poetry, when you see an object, think of the connotations that come with this item or object. Okay, again, if someone mentions a ring on their finger, They might not be specifically talking about the ring. They could be talking about commitment, right? Or attachment, or love, or friendship. Yes? Another example. Look at these two sentences. My wife tore my suit, and my wife shredded my suit. Which one has a more negative connotation? Which one shows anger? Do you think the first sentence shows anger, or the second one shows anger? Yes, Muhammad?
I guess shredded because it gives more violence in it.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Very good, exactly. So as Muhammad mentioned, the first one, tore my suit, بالغلط. والله, my wife, she ripped my suit. But the second one shows anger, shows a bit more violence. She shredded my suit, right? So again, you can tell from the second sentence that there's more of a negative connotation with the second sentence, okay? Yes, Muhammad?
The second sentence shows more aggressive. But can we also say on the English, if the word is more letters, could be giving strong meaning? I mean, if we are talking about tore and shredded, tore is only 4 letters, shredded is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 letters. Maybe it's giving strong meaning as long we have long words.
I don't think it's the number of letters, Muhammad. I think it depends on the word itself.
Maybe you can give us the good idea.
Yeah, so maybe, for example, I think what's important is not to count how many letters we have in the word, but to actually think of the word itself. Because if you think of the word tore from the word tear يعني for example يمزق, right, or to تخزق, right? So this could be by accident. Yeah. Whereas shredded, it's shredded basically. No. Yeah, exactly. Shredded is not by accident. You did it. Yeah, you did it on purpose. You understand, Muhammad?
Yes.
Yeah, so always think. If I say, for example, think again. If we go back to colors, right? Imagine I tell you that, wallah, I was out all day with my friends, and then I go, I went back home. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I opened the door. I closed the door slowly because I didn't want my wife to wake up. I turned around and I saw my wife staring at me. Her eyes were red. What does that mean if I tell you that my wife's eyes were red? What does that mean?
She is angry.
Exactly. Yes. Women will understand. Yes, that she was extremely angry, right? Without even telling you she was angry, I only used the color. I only used the color red. I used the color red to describe my wife's eyes, and you guys understood that my wife was actually angry without even mentioning the word anger. Okay? So, what are the elements of poetry? If you guys remember when we talked about the elements of fiction, remember we talked about characters, plot, setting, POV, style, and theme. We talked about the 6 elements of fiction, right? For poetry, we have the elements of poetry. You don't really have to memorize them, but just keep them in your head. Just make sure that and you have a general or like basic understanding of what the elements are in poetry. We have طبعا structure and form, which is very different from, if you think of the form or the structure of poetry, it's very, very different from obviously plays or fiction. We have طبعا the sound patterns. That's why poetry is beautiful, because we have sounds. We care about the rhythm and rhyme, and of course we have the figurative language. Again, if you remember from what I said in the beginning of the class, why is poetry more beautiful? I think Arzak mentioned a few. She mentioned things like similes and metaphors and so on, right? We'll talk more about that inshallah. Okay, so it says the structure of a poem طبعا includes lines grouped into stanzas. If you remember, I mentioned this before. A poem is written in lines, and sometimes these lines are grouped into stanzas. You will see in today's poem that we actually have 6 stanzas, and each stanza I think has around 3 to 4 lines. Okay. So there are 3 types or forms of poems. We have a lyric. We have lyric poetry. It's a poem with one speaker, not necessarily the poet, who expresses strong thoughts and feelings. So remember, a poem is usually a genuine expression of feeling. I think Muhammad mentioned this in the beginning of the class. So a lyric poetry is basically it's when you have a poem that expresses very, very strong thoughts and feelings. And I think today's poem is a good example of lyric poetry. Okay. The second one is a narrative poem. A narrative poem is a poem that tells me a story. It tells me a story, okay? So instead of writing fiction, instead of writing an actual story, once upon a time there was Mshafshu, 1, 2, 3, you can actually tell me a story in a poem format. And the last one is a descriptive poem. It's a poem that describes the world that surrounds the speaker. So imagine, let's say you travel, let's say you go to, for example, you go to Italy, for example, and you fall in love with the country. You might be inspired to write a poem about the beautiful nature in Italy, for example, or like about the beautiful mountains there. Okay. Again, just to give you an example of stanzas, right? So again, a poem is written in lines, and of course these lines are grouped into stanzas. So here, for example, the first 4 lines, this is called stanza number 1, and the second 4 lines are grouped together, and this is the second stanza. Okay. The sound patterns, again, very important. This is actually what makes poetry. This is what makes poetry unique to a certain extent. Poems often include poetic devices like rhythm and rhyme. So if you think of what makes poetry different from fiction and plays, for example, one major difference is just it's the sound patterns, right? The way it's written is so different from other types of literature. But guys, remember, not every poem has to rhyme. Some people assume that every poem has to rhyme, right? It says when a poem doesn't rhyme or have a particular rhythm, then it's known as free verse. So there are types of poems where you don't really have to have the words rhyming at the end, okay? When the last words in a poem's lines rhyme, it's called end rhyme. And you will see in today's poem that we actually also have end rhyme. I want you to actually guess where the rhyming is when I show you the poem, okay? A little fun fact for people who like people who like to know a bit more. It says, did you know that back in the old days, poems were often sung instead of read? And so the use of rhyme and rhythm were used to help people remember the poems. So guys, before writing was a thing, before books were actually available, we come from a very oral culture, especially in the Arab world, So before people actually had books and people started to write things down, of course people would say things to each other. And generations, like a father, for example, if he wanted his son to, let's say, memorize something, he wanted his son to remember something to pass on to his children, they would basically sing the poems. So poems, they were actually sung, and that would make it easier for the people to memorize so that they can pass it on from one generation to the next. Okay. And the last part of the elements of poetry is the figurative language. Okay, it is language that is used imaginatively rather than literally. Again, when I gave you the example, my wife is a rose. When I say that my wife is a rose, I don't mean that my wife is an actual plant. I mean that my wife is as beautiful as a rose. I hope my wife can hear me now, okay? To express ideas or feelings in new ways. So language that is used imaginatively. When I talk about figurative language, we talk about language being used in the form of imagination, not literally. Okay, to express ideas or feelings in new ways. For example, again, this is the example I gave you. She was a rose and I was attracted to her scent. Okay? So when I say that, I don't mean that this person is actually a plant. I mean that she was as beautiful as a rose, and of course I was attracted to her vibe, to her aura, to her presence, and so on. If you can imagine like a bee, if you can imagine insects, I don't want to say insects, maybe bees are a bit better. If you can imagine a bee attracted to a flower, how bees go to flowers, right, and so on. So there's like this beautiful relationship between flowers and bees. So here this person is almost like describing the same thing. Yeah. So what makes poetry more beautiful, basically? Yes, we talked about figurative language, but can you give us some examples? Okay, here I give you 8 examples. 8 things you can do if you wish to write a poem, and what you can do to make your writing a bit more beautiful. Okay? So, figures of speech are used to make the writing process more creative and, of course, more interesting to read. Yes? You can also use this when it comes to writing a story, but generally speaking, you find more figures of speech in poetry than in fiction. Okay? So, the first thing you can do, guys, is you can use something called a simile. I think Arzak mentioned this again. What is a simile, guys? A simile is when you compare 2 things using like or as. Okay? Let me give you an example. Actually, I want you guys to give me an example. Let me use Khalid. Khalid Al-Mutari, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, okay, great. Khalid, I want you to please use a simile to describe Mr. Farran. Allah yastur.
I'm trying to think something that isn't offensive.
Remember, I'm recording this session, yes?
I know.
So, Mr. Farran is as nice as...
No, I can't.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Khalid. Let me go to yeah, Muhammad. Yes, go ahead. Muhammad Al-Mutali, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mr. Farhan is fighting the rumors like a soldier, maybe.
Yeah, very good. Mr. Farhan is fighting. What did you say, Muhammad?
Fighting the rumors that some people say
Yeah,
that
thank you.
anything.
Thank you so much, Muhammad. Exactly. Mr. Farhan is fighting the rumors like a soldier. You understand? Very nice. I like that. Thank you, Muhammad. Let's hear. Let me get something from yeah, Muhammad. Yes, the other Muhammad. Go ahead.
Mr. Farhan is talking as a native speaker.
Mr. Farhan speaks English like a native speaker. Yeah, that's nice. Exactly. That's nice. Thank you for that, Muhammad. Let me Arzag. Allah yastur.
Yes.
Wow, you don't seem too happy when I called your name. Just like, yes, naam.
No, I'm happy. Okay.
Okay. So,
You want me
Arzag,
to say it
yes.
about you?
Yes, go ahead, please.
About you?
Yes, please.
Um,
Allah yastur.
I don't know. It didn't give me time to think.
Oh my God, all this you didn't have time to think?
No, I didn't think.
Okay, Arzak, how about, okay, give me a sentence about yourself.
About myself.
Arzak is as nice as,
I'm not nice.
okay, Arzak is as horrible as,
Dr. Ferran.
wow, oh my God. Wow.
That's two in one.
Two, shit. Wow, I felt that slap. Okay, wow, okay. Remind me to never ask you for examples again.
You said that you want me to say something about you, and about myself. I said two things.
Thank you so much.
One sentence.
I'm glad the session is being recorded. I will keep this for life. It's a beautiful memory.
I forgot.
Too late. No, honestly, Arzak, imagine, like, remember, like, so guys, when you talk about yourselves, sometimes you might compare yourself to someone else or to something else, right? Right? Sometimes people might say, well, Sarah is as beautiful as the moon, for example, or Ahmed is as hardworking as a machine, for example, right? Things like that. So, when you do something like that, when you compare two things together, then you are using a simile. This is called a simile. Okay, you compare two things together using like or as. There's another form of comparison which is called a metaphor. A metaphor is a more direct comparison between two things, but without using like or as. For example, imagine that you're sitting. Imagine during COVID when we had to stay at home. Some people felt like they were in jail, right? So you can say that his house was a prison, not like a prison. His house was a prison. Muhammad was a soldier. Ala طول, you understand? Ahmed was a lion in battle. Okay, Ahmed was a lion in battle, and so on and so forth. Okay, so when you have a direct comparison between two things, this is called a metaphor. Okay? The third one is personification. Personification is when you give human qualities to objects or to things which are inanimate. Again, personification is when you give human qualities to things which are not human. For example, if I say right now, because I'm sitting at home and my wife is somewhere in the house, I can say that the walls in my room are listening to me. The walls in my room are listening to me. So here I took listening, which is about a human quality, and I gave it to an object, which are the walls. If you say the moon winked at me, this is another example of personification. Because again, you take the action of winking and you give it to the object, the moon, right? Sometimes if you see videos of floods that happen around the world, specifically in Asia, sometimes you see the water just, like engulfing and covering entire villages and cities. So you can say the water or the sea swallowed the earth, or the sea swallowed the village. You understand? Again, swallowing here is a good example of personification because you're taking a human quality and you're giving it to an object or something which is not alive. Okay? So that is called personification. Okay? And again, guys, all of these things make poetry more beautiful. You understand? So when I say that, wallah, the walls are listening to me, this is interesting. You somehow imagine, the walls having ears, right? So that's why poetry is more beautiful. It's because of these figures of speech. Okay? Number 4 is actually it's called an allusion. Allusion is, by the way, not illusion with an I, it's allusion with an A. Allusion with an A is a reference to a well-known figure or event in the past. I'll give you a simple example. Imagine my wonderful, beautiful wife says, Muhammad, you are not romantic. And I say, yeah, Habibti, you're right. I'm no Romeo. Right? When I tell my wife I'm no Romeo, my wife gets the reference. She understands this allusion. Because Romeo is طبعا referring to the very famous and romantic character from Shakespeare's play, Romeo and Juliet. But if I tell my wife I'm no Abdul Aziz, she'll be like, who the hell is Abdul Aziz? I don't get the reference. Okay, guys, you understand? So when you refer to a specific event, when you refer to a famous event or a specific person who is well known in history, this is called an allusion. Okay? Not illusion with an I, it's an allusion with an A. Number 5, irony. I think we spoke about irony before when we talked about, I think it was Dead Man's Path, if I'm not mistaken. Do you guys remember do you guys remember what irony is? What is irony? Or can someone give me an example? What is irony? Yes, Muhammad?
Is to making love of someone.
You can use it, yes, Muhammad, you're right. You can use it to make fun of someone. Yes, for example, let me hear some more examples, and I'll give you my example. Yes, other Muhammad?
Is it the same way of being sarcastic at someone?
Almost the same. Yes, you're right, Muhammad. It's almost like being sarcastic, exactly. So when I was in school, we had a guy who had no hair, and people called him Sha'rawi. Okay, that's ironic because he's bald, he has no hair, and people call him Sha'rawi. We had a very short guy in class, and people called him Tawila. Boys, boys being boys, right? Yeah, so things like that. Imagine having a pilot who's scared of heights. That's ironic because you're a pilot. Like imagine you're on the plane, and then the pilot comes on, and then when the pilot speaks, their voice is never clear, right? And the pilot's like, today we're going to fly at 50 meters. And then he looks down, he's like, ah! Habibi, you're a pilot. You're not supposed to be scared. This is your job. You cannot be scared of heights. If you are scared of heights or scared of flying, you're not supposed to be a pilot. That's ironic if you find a pilot scared of heights. Yes, Dawood?
It is a contradictory statement or a situation. For example, in the story we took, The Dead Man's Path, you saw Obi in the whole story was trying to make the school flourish, but in the end he saw its own destruction.
Exactly.
That is ironic.
That's so true, exactly. So yes, in Dead Man's Path, as Dawood mentioned, yes, we actually have 2 or 3 examples of irony. And as Dawood mentioned, throughout the whole story, Michael Obi's dream was to make the school modern and beautiful, and he wanted to show off to people. But ironically, at the very end, it was because of his actions, the school was entirely destroyed. Another example of irony, of course, are the white missionaries, the supervisors, the white people who chose Michael Obi. And imagine, they chose him, they handpicked Michael Obi as the best person to run the school. Ironically, he was the worst person they chose. You understand? It's like imagine you want to open a restaurant. And let's say, for example, you choose X as your chef. This guy is the best chef in Kuwait. I'm pretty sure he's going to make the best dish. And then because you hire that chef, and you start losing money. He's like the worst chef possible. Like your 5-year-old niece can cook better than this guy. So it's a bit ironic how they chose Michael Obi as the best person to run the school, and eventually he was actually one of the worst. Yeah. So yeah, those are some examples of irony. Another good example of irony is an English teacher who doesn't know the definition of irony. Imagine having a fitness class. Imagine you have a teacher who's telling you to eat healthy, while that teacher is eating a burger and pizza while they teach you. So again, it's ironic, right? A fireman scared of fire, for example, that's ironic. And you call the fire brigade to come put out a fire in your neighborhood, and that guy is scared of fire. Habibi, it's a bit ironic. I mean, your job is to put out fires, right? So these are all examples of irony. Yep. Euphemism is a word substituted for one which is less harsh. Okay, what do I mean by that? Sometimes in English we don't usually. Sometimes we don't say things as they are. We tend to give you a word which is less harsh, and this is actually also used in the news. If you listen to the news and you listen to the media, you will find a lot of examples of euphemisms. Yes, Muhammad.
Is it the same that is it very similar to the last 2 sentences we took, that tore close and shredded?
In what? Not exactly the same, Muhammad, but there is a similarity. Yes, I understand what you're trying. I understand
Yeah.
what you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So euphemism, Muhammad, is something like, for example, instead of saying, he died, he didn't die. Wallah, he passed away. Okay, even like in Arabic, we don't say wallah tuwaffa, wallah mat. We say wallah atak umru in Arabic. So in euphemism is when we take a word which is harsh and we substitute it with one which is less harsh. By the way, in the news, if you watch the news, they use euphemisms all the time because for their own political agendas. For example, they will describe the occupation in Palestine as a clash. There's a clash between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It's not a clash, Habibi. It's an occupation. You understand? When a company fires people, they don't say, Wallah, we fired people, we let them go. We had to downsize. You understand? By the way, even teachers, we sometimes use this. I don't fail students, but they sometimes have to repeat the course. But I did not fail them. You understand? So, again, euphemism is when you substitute a word for one which is less harsh. Okay? And you will see this played out in poetry again sometimes. Yep. Symbolism, again, we talked about symbolism. Again, we talked about, the pigeon, for example, a white bird can represent peace, freedom, tranquility, tenderness, softness, love sometimes, and so on. Colors as well, as we talked about, black can represent a certain, again, like in the Arabic culture or like in the Arab world, we tend to wear black when someone passes away, when we go to a funeral, and white is usually symbolic of, for example, purity or happiness. That's why women wear white. In weddings, and men wear a color which represents their inner self. That's why my suit was so black on my wedding. I forgot my wife is here. So yeah, colors. By the way, also think of fast food. When you think of the fast food logos that you see, think of things like Subway and McDonald's and Burger King and so on. Usually they will use the same colors over and over again. You will usually find these bright colors like yellow, green, red in their logos. Think of the McDonald's logo, think of the Burger King logo, think of Subway's logo, for example. You will usually have 3 or 4 bright colors repeated over and over again. Why don't we have the color brown or the color gray or the color black in those logos? It's because according to color psychology, they discovered that certain colors induce hunger. Certain colors make you feel hungry. Right? So bright colors like yellow, green, and red, they actually make you feel hungrier. Imagine the McDonald's logo in black and white or gray, for example. Gray is a very boring color, so hardly anyone uses it in their logos, right? For example, when you go to a hospital, think of the colors of the walls. What color are the walls in a hospital usually? They're usually maybe white, or let's say off-white, or something maybe light, or something like calm on the eyes. Sorry?
Blue.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
blue.
maybe
Maybe,
blue.
ma- exactly, maybe blue. Imagine walking inside the hospital and the color of the walls are black. You would be creeped out. You're like, you know what? I don't feel pain anymore. All of a sudden, subhanallah, I feel much better, right? And you would go back home, right? Again, think of, for example, schools or kindergartens, right? Usually the walls are painted in maybe baby blue or like baby pink or something light, right? To keep to keep the kids kind of excited, right? You don't want to paint the walls black. They actually had an experiment done in the States where they wanted to see if colors can affect the prisoners in a cell, right? The prisoners so they took one of the violent prisoners, they took him out of his cell, and then they redecorated his cell and they painted the walls of a cell, imagine, pink. So when the inmate was brought back into his cell, he was kind of shocked. Why did you guys, why are you painting my, the walls of my cell pink? And they discovered within 3 months he became less aggressive. Subhanallah, imagine just by painting the walls of his cell pink, the inmate became less aggressive. So colors can affect us. Colors have an effect on us. Even right now, when you guys are sitting, if you guys are sitting at home right now, I'm pretty sure that some of you have your walls painted. Some of you painted the walls in your room or like in your house a certain color because maybe you like these colors, maybe these colors make you feel a certain way, right? So again, symbolism again is an object or a color which represents an abstract idea. Okay, objects can represent things like freedom, peace, blood, warfare, religion, even sometimes, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then the last one, guys, we have something called puns. I don't know if you guys have heard of puns before, but a pun is a humorous play on words involving double meaning. So it's when you use one word to maybe represent two different things. I'll give you just some simple examples, okay? These are good examples of puns. Here you have two objects or two things talk to each other, and one of them says "do not talk to me" or "do not talk to me," and then the other one says "leave me alone." طبعا donut or do not is a pun, and "leave me alone" here means طبعا leave me alone. Okay, so this is a good example of a pun. It's when you use a word to represent two different ideas, if you wish. Another good example is this one. You have a family of bullets. Okay, and then the mother bullet is saying, she sees the husband come in from work, and she says, "What happened to you?" And he says, "I got fired." So of course, when you have a bullet, you can fire the bullet from the gun, but also when you say "I got fired," it means that you have to leave your job. You have to go somewhere else. You have to find another job. Okay, I got fired. Yeah. So those are good examples of puns. Yeah. So, is poetry beautiful? Guys, what do you think? In your opinion, do you think poetry is beautiful? Yes or no? What do you think? Yes, Mohammed?
Yes, it is beautiful because you can express your feelings with words.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You can actually express how you truly feel towards other people, right? Using poems, yeah? Let me give you an example, okay? You tell me, guys, which approach is more romantic, right? Imagine, let's say that you fall in love, right? And for you, if you guys are married, pretend you're single, right? Just for the next 2 minutes only, yeah? So imagine that you fall in love and you want to show the other person how you truly feel. Which one is more romantic? This approach where you write a poem, for example, you can write something like this. "I wrote your name in the sky, but the wind blew it away. I wrote your name in the sand, but the waves washed it away. I wrote your name in my heart, and forever it will stay." Right? That's short, it's beautiful. This person is actually expressing his emotions. So which one is more romantic? This approach or just being direct? "Me love you, yalla wallah habbij, wallah wallah." Which one's more romantic? I am pretty sure most of you would agree that the first approach is 10 times more romantic. You're actually putting your heart down on paper. You're actually telling the other person how you truly feel. You're telling this person that you can't live, and you can't live without that person. Whereas this one is so direct, right? And anyone can say "I love you." It's so easy. And actually people say it so often these days, it's meaningless. Whereas how many people can actually put their feelings down on paper? How many people can actually, especially guys, how many guys can actually be honest with their true feelings towards someone else and be brave enough to put their feelings down on paper? Not many. Not many people can do that. And that's why this is so much more romantic, right? If you don't see the beauty in poetry, you probably didn't look hard enough. So for those of you who don't like poetry, it says here, if you don't see the beauty in poetry, you probably didn't look hard enough. Because there is beauty in poetry. Poetry is actually very, very beautiful. And it's also very, very meaningful. So if you don't see the beauty, there's nothing wrong with the poem, there's something wrong with your eyes. It's like if you don't see the value of gold, the value of gold does not change. You are unable to see the value of gold, right? So the problem is with you, it's not with the gold. Same thing with poetry. And let me give you some good examples, guys, okay? Here we have a poem called "Why." So the says here, "Why?" This person says, "In a rose garden I am a thorn. So confused, apart I am torn. What is life? Why was I born?" So guys, have you ever had these feelings of doubt in your life where you start to kind of doubt your entire existence and you start to doubt why you're alive and what is your purpose on this planet and so on? I think we've all been through those feelings where you just kind of, you doubt everything, right? And you're not really sure. You feel like you don't fit in anywhere, right? So it's a very short poem. It's to the point. It rhymes as well. You can clearly see the rhyming in this poem as well. In a rose garden, I am a thorn. So this person feels like in a garden where you have roses, this person is like a thorn, right? And so confused, apart I am torn. What is life and why was I born? So we all go through these moments of in life where we kind of we doubt everything. We doubt our existence. We doubt the people we have in our life, and it's a very tough spot to be in, right? By the way, do you guys know who wrote this poem? This guy is a famous celebrity, if I'm not mistaken. Arzak, any idea?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, let's hear from Muhammad. Muhammad, any idea who this person who wrote this poem?
No, I don't have any ideas.
Okay, what about
I
Layla?
love my head by mistake. okay.
Oh, sorry. No, it's okay, Muhammad. Don't worry about it. Layla, any idea who wrote this poem? I don't know if Layla can hear me, but okay. If you guys want to know who wrote this poem, this poem was written by a very famous celebrity. You've seen his movies before. His name is yeah, it's me. Anyways, I don't know why I don't know why the screen isn't full over here. But anyway, here's another beautiful poem, not written by me, written by someone else, and the title of the poem is called Masks. So it says, "She had blue skin, and so did he. He kept it hid, and so did she. They searched for blue their whole life through, then passed right by and never knew." So guys, this is another beautiful poem, and I like this poem because if you think about it, you know, when we meet people, we tend to wear masks, right? We are not who we truly are in front of other people. We tend to wear masks. And that's why sometimes marriage is hard. Because sometimes we assume and we think we know the other person, but it was all a mask. It was all just, you know, it was all like an act. So sometimes we try to meet the other person, we try to meet other people in life, but we're just busy wearing masks, and we don't get to know, we don't get to see the true nature or the soul of that person. Yes, Muhammad.
Doctor, this point is very interesting because we have mask as, or I mean, we have the number of the mask with the number of people we see. In the office we have mask, in the house we have mask, in the mosque we have mask, in the work we have mask, everywhere.
Exactly.
Or sometimes with every person. We
True.
are sitting with the three. Every one of them we have a mask. You can be fun, you can be busy with one, you can be serious with one of them. Really.
True. Yeah, that's a good point, Muhammad. Exactly. That's why they say there's a different version of you in everyone's head. So, you understand, Muhammad? So there's a version of you in my head, and the version of you in Dawood's head is not the same. The version of you in Wallah Ahmed's head is not the same. So everyone, there's a different version of you in everyone's head. So yeah, that's a good point that Muhammad mentioned. Sometimes you wear a mask, you wear a different mask with different people. You have a mask that you wear when you go to work. You have a mask that you wear when you go to the mosque. You have a mask that you wear while in front of your parents, or in front of your colleagues at work, in school, university, and so on. So it's very interesting. And by the way, when you wear a mask, and sometimes this prevents you from actually meeting the right people in life. If you pretend to be one, if you pretend to be a certain somebody and you're not that person, then you're limiting the amount of people who will genuinely see your soul. Yep. Here's another interesting poem written by Lang Leave. Taban Lang Leave, she's a famous, I believe, Chinese author. I've read one of her books, and she mainly writes poetry. And she became famous actually in Kuwait because one of her books was banned. So because the book was banned, it became more popular. And that's also another good example of irony. When you try to ban something, it becomes more popular. So that's also ironic, right? But she wrote here, "Your love I once surrendered has never left my mind. My heart is just as tender as the day I called you mine. I did not take you with me, but you were never left behind." Again, very short, to the point, full of emotion, right? Another good poem is this one, written by Emily Dickinson. She says the title of the poem is "A Word." And it says here, "A word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day." So that's very interesting. Does a word die when you say it, or does it begin to live? So she says, "A word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day." So when you say something, is it over? Is the word dead, or is the word alive in other people's brains or heads, right? Interesting. This is one of my favorite poems, by the way. I'm going to give you just 1 minute just to read it, please. Read it from top to bottom and tell me what you think, okay? Let me just fix it 1 second. Let me just, because I think you guys might not be able to see it. This is a bit better. Yeah, okay. So guys, just read it, please, and tell me what you think. Tell me what you think this poem is about, okay? Okay, so for those who were able to read the poem, guys, what do you think of this poem, by the way? So the title of the poem is called "Lost Generation," right? What do you think, Muhammad? Yes, go ahead. What do you think?
I don't know. I get lost in the middle. When he said, I will leave my children and my employer no. I'm just confused. Is he greedy or is he needy for the money? I'm not. I didn't finish the reading, but I stopped in the middle.
Here, you
But
mean
that's it. I think.
around here,
Yeah.
Muhammad? Yeah.
No. Lower. At 30 years from now, I'll be celebrating the
Ah,
10th anniversary of my divorce. Is
okay.
that you? I'm not sure.
I hope not. uh, but okay, Muhammad. So generally speaking, just the part you read, would you think is this poem positive or is this poem negative?
No, it is negative.
It's very negative.
Yeah, yeah, because he's will I don't know, he will dump his children and he gonna leave following the money.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, as
Yeah.
Muhammad mentioned, yes, if you read this poem carefully, guys, it's super negative. Muhammad Abu Shara, do you agree with other Muhammad?
Yes, it is very negative, but it's straightforward because he is talking about something we are always see.
Exactly.
When we are child, when we are child, our children, they always say, you make your happiness. The happiness is from you. Sometimes not true, and we always say here, money is not everything. Yes, we know money is not everything, but almost things come with money.
That's true. Yeah, good point. Exactly. Yeah, good point, Muhammad. Yes. So generally speaking, yes, we are part of this. If you think of the title, "Lost Generation," we are living in this day and age. We are a lost generation, right? If you think about it, it's so negative, it's so depressing. If you read it, right? Dawood, what do you think?
I think it's just pointing out the common negative morals that this generation has about different perspectives,
Hmm.
such as money, the way they see family.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is the life we're living right now, guys. Right? If you think about it, right? Even if this was like written, let's say, what, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, this is the life we have right now. And again, as Dawood mentioned, he's taking, let's say, different aspects from life. He talks about family, he talks about money, and then he talks about it in such a, it's a depressing way, but it's also a very realistic way. It's like he's putting a mirror into the face of society. Okay, guys, I'm gonna read it very quickly, and then I'll show you how depressing this poem is. So the title of the poem is "Lost Generation." Huh? He says, "I'm part of a lost generation, and I refuse to believe that I can change the world. I realize this may be a shock, but happiness comes from within is a lie, and money will make me happy. So in 30 years, I'll tell my children they are not the most important thing in my life. My employer will know that I have my priorities straight because work is more important than family. I tell you this, once upon a time, families stayed together, but this will not be true in my era. This is a quick fix society. Experts tell me 30 years from now, I'll be celebrating the 10th anniversary of my divorce. I do not concede that I will live in a country of my own making. In the future, environmental destruction will be the norm. No longer can it be said that my peers and I care about this earth. It will be evident that my generation is apathetic and lethargic. It is foolish to presume that there is hope. It's all so negative. And unfortunately, if we look at today's society, it is almost true, right? We are living in a generation where people really don't care. We are living in a generation where we have destruction, we have wars, we have people dying, the earth is slowly dying, we don't really care about the climate or and so on and so forth, right? But there's something, guys, that is very interesting about this poem, right? Look at the last line. Look what it says. It is foolish to presume that there is hope. And all of this will come true unless we reverse it. So guys, what I want you to do now is I want you to please reverse the poem. I want you to please reverse the poem. So read the poem from bottom to top, please. I'll give you like 20 seconds. Read the poem again, but this time from bottom to top.
Wow, it's interesting. Really.
It's the other way around. Do you see it? Right?
Yes.
Subhanallah.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's shocking, guys. This poem is crazy. If you read it from subhanallah, if you read it from top to bottom, it has one meaning, but if you read it from bottom to top, it has the opposite meaning. Guys, remember, so when I read it from beginning to when I read it from the beginning over here all the way to the end, it was so negative. But then look at the last line, and all of this will come true unless we reverse it. Let's reverse the poem. Let's read it now from bottom to top. There is hope. It is foolish to presume that my generation is apathetic and lethargic. It will be evident that my peers and I care about this earth. No longer can it be said that environmental destruction will be the norm. In the future, I will live in a country of my own making. And I do not concede that 30 years from now I'll be celebrating the 10th anniversary of my divorce. Experts tell me that this is a quick fix society, but this will not be true in my era. Families stayed together once upon a time. I tell you this, Taban, family is more important than work. Do you remember the first time we read it? Work is more important than family. Now, Taban, family is more important than work. I have my priorities straight because my employer will know that they are not the most important thing in my life. So in 30 years, I'll tell my children, money will make me happy is a lie and happiness comes from within. I realize this may be a shock, but I can change the world. And I refuse to believe that I'm part of a lost generation. Subhanallah. What a beautiful poem. I don't know who wrote this. Whoever wrote this is a genius. They are honestly a genius because this poem has two different meanings depending on how you read the poem. If you read the poem from top to bottom, it is very depressing and it is very, very negative. But if you read the same poem from bottom to top, subhanallah, everything changes and the poem becomes so much more hopeful. Yes, Muhammad.
To be honest, when I was reading that poem from the start, I felt like there is something wrong. Yeah, I was reading and my friend already is nearby me. So when I was reading, I felt like there is something wrong with the writing. So when I read it from the bottom, it was perfect.
Exactly.
So yeah, he's a genius.
He is. Whoever wrote this is a genius. And yes, as Muhammad said, by the way, it is a bit shubha because why is it written this way? And for example, why is right?
This sentence specifically. I have my priorities straight because work is more important than family. I don't think that there's something wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. So why is it written this way? Why does he have one word here and four words here? Yeah. Good point, Muhammad. Exactly. There you go. So when you think about it, yes, as Muhammad said, he felt that something was off. Something was shubha about this poem. And again, he wrote it this way, Taban. He had to write it this way because when you read it from bottom to top, it will have a different meaning. So he cannot put this sentence together. He has to put work over here by itself is more important than family here by itself, because when you read it this way, it says work is more important than family, and then when you read it in reverse, family is more important than work. So again, it's written in a certain style, and it's very suspicious as well, because he had to, again, this person, he organized his ideas in such a beautiful way, which gives this poem two different meanings depending on the direction in which you read this poem. I mean, how many times have you seen a poem that has two different meanings depending on the direction in which you read it? SubhanAllah. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So that's why I tell you guys, poetry is just amazing. Wallah, sometimes you can read a poem and it can change your life. Right? So that is why I love poetry personally, right? Let me show you some differences, guys, before we dive into today's poem, some differences between fiction or prose and taban poetry. So prose does not pay attention to rhyme and rhythm. When you're reading a short story, you don't really care about rhyming and the rhythm of the short story. Whereas taban in poetry, we have to pay attention to rhyme and rhythm. It's very important, okay? That's what makes a poem a poem. Without rhyme and rhythm, there really is no poem anymore, right? In fiction, the writer has no word limit. You can write a book, you can write a story that is 10 pages, 100 pages, 1,000 pages. You can have several chapters, several books, several volumes, right? Whereas in poetry, the poet has a certain number of words. He has a limited number of words. He can't just write a poem of like 1,000 pages. Of course, in fiction or in prose, ideas are written in sentences, and of course, these sentences are grouped into paragraphs. And in poetry, ideas are written طبعا in lines, and these lines are grouped into stanzas. In prose or in fiction, طبعا the language is more natural, and of course, it's more grammatical. In poetry, that's not the case, of course. In poetry, the language is more figurative, it's more rhythmical, it's more unnatural, it's more indirect. And because of the language, طبعا, because of course the language is more natural and grammatical in fiction, of course it can be understood by reading it once only. So if you read a short story or you read a novel, you can read it only one time and you can understand everything. But because in poetry the language is more figurative, it's more rhythmical, and it's more indirect, sometimes you have to read it more than once to understand it. So when you read a poem and you don't understand it, there's nothing wrong with you. You just have to read it more than once, because it's not easy to understand the poem just by reading it one time, okay? Again, because the language is طبعا more indirect, and because we have more figures of speech and so on. So guys, how do we analyze a poem? What is the best way to analyze a poem? The answer is, the best way to analyze a poem is to approach it like a puzzle. It's as if you're doing a puzzle, okay? You have to think, you have to question, you have to think a lot, you have to ask yourself some questions, and when you do so, you will get a better and deeper understanding of the poem itself, okay? What can you do exactly? Let me give you some tips. Okay, so the next time you see a poem, if you want to, let's say, get a deeper understanding or like a better understanding of the poem, then do the following. Number one, read the title. So I don't know if you guys read today's poem. Why did she call the poem? Why did the author, or why did the poet Elizabeth Bishop, why did she call the poem One Art, for example? So always read the title. Remember, the title is never ashwa'i, it's never like random, it's never just a coincidence. The title is generally handpicked, it's chosen by the author or by the poet, okay? So always think of the title and what the title might tell you about the poem's subject and tone. That's number one. Number two, read the poem several times. Remember, reading the poem one time is not enough. Read the poem several times, do it silently and do it aloud, because you want to see if you can catch the rhythm and the rhyme in the poem when you read it out loud. Okay? Number three, listen carefully to the sound and rhythm of the words. Number four, think, what is this poem about? What are some of the themes? What did this writer want us to understand? Or what was the repeated idea over and over again? For example, if you read today's poem, there is one idea that is central, that is repeated in almost every stanza. Okay? Number five, what is the situation? What is going on? Who is talking to whom? About what exactly, right? Number six, what is the author's attitude towards his or her subject? Is it serious? Is it ironic? Is it humorous? Is it hostile? Is this person trying to make fun of the subject? Is this person serious? Is this person trying to be funny? You understand? And so on and so forth. So, what is the author's attitude? Yeah? Number seven, try to paraphrase the poem line by line to understand its meaning. So sometimes you might not, you might find it a bit difficult. You might have to paraphrase or find synonyms for certain words or just entire lines to make it easier for you to understand. Number eight, what do you know about the poet and the time of the poem the poem was written in? What about the speaker? So guys, think about the poet. What do you know about the poet? It's always a good idea to know something about the writer, whether it's fiction or whether it's actually even a poem or even a play, right? Because usually, if someone's been through a lot in life, if you've been through pain, then that pain is going to show in fiction. It's going to show in your writing. It's like when you look at a painting. If you look at the painting, you can actually tell what that painter was going through. Maybe it could be depression, could be mental issues. That person could be going through a divorce, for example. And you will see that pain in that painting. It's very similar when it comes to fiction, when it comes to poetry. Right? Ask yourself, what do you know about the poet? And again, today we will talk a bit about the author, Elizabeth Bishop. Okay? She unfortunately had a very, very tough life. If you think your life was tough, your life is nothing compared to hers. Okay? And also, what about the time the poem was written in? So, for example, a poem written by a woman in 1920 is not the same as a poem written today by a woman, because obviously some women were fighting for their freedom. They were fighting for their rights back in the 1920s, right? Whereas today, yes, women are, let's say, obviously women have more freedoms today than they had 100 years ago, right? Are there any, number nine, are there like any allusions to other literary or historical figures or events? So does the poem refer to a famous event or a famous person or like a famous item that you can go back to? And number 10, how are the ideas ordered? Is there a progression of some sort? From simple to complex, from past to present, from one place to another. In today's poem, actually, you will see that the author does progress. As you move on in the poem, you will see that she moves on from something to something else. Okay. So, any questions so far, guys? If you have any questions, yes, Muhammad, go ahead.
There's no question. Just I was about to tell you that I have to leave because I'm gonna pick up my mother.
Oh, okay. If you have to leave, then yeah, it's okay, Muhammad. I am recording the session, so you can always go back and watch the video. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So
yes, Muhammad.
So the quiz is gonna be next week.
Yes, next time I see you on Monday.
Okay. So it's gonna be multiple choices and.
Most of it is going to be multiple choice, Muhammad, and I might give you some short answers. But make sure you study up from slavery, only the first 5 pages, and one art.
Okay.
Okay.
You,
You're welcome, Muhammad. You're welcome. Bye bye. So again, guys. So now, by the way, please raise your hand if you read the poem. If you read the poem One Art, please raise your hand. I hope that you guys had the chance to read the poem. It's not too long, to be honest. It's like maybe 14 lines, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, Arzag. So did you like the poem?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay, can you tell us, Arzag? Yeah, go ahead.
No, continue what you are saying.
So okay, Arzag, just like in 1 or 2 words, what is the poem about?
Okay. It's the writer Elizabeth. She was talking about the I was going to say first she had a tone in
Okay.
in the poem,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a lot of rhyme scheme, and it was like she lost her mother's watch,
Mm-hmm.
and she was feeling a disaster and a feeling bad feeling about
Okay.
about losing a lot of things in her past,
Mhm.
something like that. That's what I understood.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, you're right. Arzag. Yes, that's so true. As Arzag mentioned, guys, this poem is really about loss. It's about losing a lot of things, and I think this is beautiful because we've all lost something in life, right? Arzag, have you ever lost something in your life? Have you ever like lost a person in your life, someone you care about?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all of us, right? If you think about it, and by the way, when I say loss, it doesn't have to be death. You can lose someone by having that person dying, right, or die. But loss can also mean losing someone. Like when you imagine you have a best friend or someone you trusted, and you guys don't talk to each other anymore. That is also a loss, right? So I think we've all been through that. We've all been through. Arzak, have you had people like that in your life as well?
Yeah, but it's as you said, it's not always the death. Maybe it's a relationship, a friendship, or someone that you found out that he or she is not like you were thinking.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's a valuable object. Maybe
True.
sometimes that people like to keep things from other people, like maybe an accessory or a note or whatever.
Exactly.
And when you lose it, it feels like you lost the thing, the feeling that
Exactly.
you had.
Yeah, good point, Arzak.
So it's not always the people. Yeah.
True, exactly. So yeah, when we talk about losing things, as Arzak mentioned, we can talk about losing people, as in death, for example, when someone passes away. We can talk about losing certain people when it comes to when a friendship ends, for example. You might have people in your life, and then the friendship ends. You guys don't talk anymore. You guys are not friends anymore. So that's a loss. And also, Arzak mentioned something about losing items that are maybe dear and important to you. They might hold some form of sentimental value. They might hold some memories. For example, maybe your grandparents or maybe your grandmother or someone you love gave you something and you can't find that anymore. It could be an accessory, as Arzak mentioned, it could be a misbah, it could be prayer beads, it could be something which reminds you of that person and then you lost that thing. So again, we've all experienced loss in our lives. If you're like an adult, you've probably experienced the loss of a person or maybe the loss of a friendship, and it's not easy, to be honest. It's not easy dealing with loss. Dawood, yes, go ahead, please.
The poem that was written by Elizabeth Bishop is called actually a villanelle. A villanelle is a type of poem that French singers used to use for their songs, and it actually follows a certain rhythm that repeats certain lines, and it follows a certain stanza.
Exactly.
But in this one, she's not actually very strict with the stanza. She's actually just repeating two main words, the word master and disaster, by the end of the stanza. But as for her words itself, she claims that everyone should be familiarized with loss, to be good at losing. She says that losing is a type of art that needs to be mastered. But I've also noticed something else. Through the poem that she wrote, she goes from losing insignificant things that are into things that are actually much more difficult to lose.
Exactly.
Ending the end of the poem by saying that she talks about losing a person, which is one of the most difficult things.
True.
That even through all that, she still say that it is not a disaster.
Yeah.
Losing is not a disaster.
Yeah, good point, Dawood, mashallah. Yeah. So again, as Dawood mentioned, of course, I will tell you more about the style next time we talk. But yes, as Dawood mentioned, the poem was written in a certain style, in a specific style called the villanelle style. And the villanelle style has a specific format. So, for example, I think you should see 14 lines. You have to have 6 stanzas, 14 lines, something like that. And you will see that there is a specific rhyming pattern as well. There's like a certain rhyming scheme in the poem itself as well. And as Dawood mentioned, if you've read the poem, you will see that the author, or Elizabeth Bishop, she goes in the beginning by mentioning, losing insignificant things, into later on towards the end of the poem to mentioning the ultimate loss, and that is taban losing a human being. Because losing items, I mean, you can always replace items, right? If you lose your phone, you can buy a new phone. If la samahallah you lose your car, you lose a TV, whatever, you lose a bag or whatever, you can always buy them. You can always buy a new bag, you can always buy a new TV, a new car, whatever. But you cannot buy another human being. Obviously, you cannot replace another human being. Yes, you can have, if you lose a friend, you can have another friend, but you cannot replace that specific friend. You understand? So yeah, this poem is beautiful. By the way, it's beautiful. It's a bit depressing, and I'm gonna give you like a trigger warning. This poem does deal with like dark issues like suicide and death and so on, and losing people. But again, there is beauty in what she says. And also, as Dawood mentioned, he mentioned that the author was trying to teach us to because she talks about the art of losing. So she's trying to kind of teach us, to tell us if is it possible for us to master the art of losing? Can you become accustomed to losing? Like if you think of the art of war, or like the art of studying clearly, or like the art of getting married, things like that. So can you master the art of losing, right? And by the way, I love this picture. I put this picture here on purpose because if you've ever lost someone in your life, someone who was dear to you, I'm pretty sure that you had this feeling in you, right? You have this kind of gaping hole inside you. So when you lose somebody in your life, it's almost like this person takes a large part of you, and they leave, and then they never come back. Right? So this picture perfectly represents this poem, right? So before I dive into the poem, guys, let me just quickly tell you a bit about the author, Elizabeth Bishop. Unfortunately, she had a very, very tough life. She had, she lost a lot in her life. And maybe that is why the poem is all about loss, right? Again, as I told you, when you see a painter, when you see a painting, for example, you can tell a lot about the psyche or about the emotions of the painter. Sometimes you get some hints, right? And it's the same with literature. It's the same with poetry and fiction. Sometimes when you experience so much pain, and then you write something down, and that pain will spill over into your work, right? So let me just quickly give you a bit of information about Elizabeth Bishop. It says her father died when she was a baby. So that's like her first musibah. So when she was a baby, her dad passed away. So she never actually knew her dad. And then her mother suffered a nervous breakdown 5 years later, forcing Elizabeth to live with her relatives. She never saw her mother again. So imagine, she lived with her mom until the age of 5, and then after, when she was 5 years old, her mother, unfortunately, she suffered a nervous breakdown. She went to a mental hospital, and imagine a 5-year-old child never seeing her mother again, right? She never saw her mother again because طبعا she passed away. And so Elizabeth Bishop, she was forced to live with her relatives. And of course, living with her relatives, she was forced to move around constantly as a child from one place to another, to the other. I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever moved around a lot in life, you will never have a place to call home, right? You will never actually have a set of good friends, because every time you make friends, you are forced to move. And again, we're talking about this, this is like a long time ago, before the internet, before telephones existed, before, social media. You can add, you guys can talk to each other, you guys can chat. So it was hard for her. Her again, she was born, her dad passed away, and after the age of 5, her mom was taken away and she passed away as well. And she never had a place to call home. For example, I'm not from Kuwait, but I call Kuwait my home because I was born and raised in Kuwait. But imagine if I had to move country every year, I wouldn't see any country as home, because I never lived long enough to actually make memories, to make friends and so on, right? And what's worse than all of that is when she got older in life, it says in her mature years, she lost her partner to suicide. So not only did she lose her parents at a young age, not only was she unable to make memories and actually have a home, but later on when she actually fell in love with somebody, that person committed suicide. And let me tell you something, guys. When someone passes away, طبعا you're heartbroken, but when someone commits suicide, the pain is multiplied. Because when someone commits suicide, you sometimes blame yourself. What if it was my fault? What if I didn't do enough? Maybe I should have texted. Maybe I should have spoken to that person. Maybe I should have been a better friend. Maybe I should have been a better listener. When someone, la samah Allah, God forbid, if someone commits suicide in your family, you tend to ask yourself, what if I could have done more? What if it's my fault? What if I wasn't there? What if I wasn't a good partner or brother or sister or whatever, right? So it's not easy dealing with those emotions. So Elizabeth Bishop clearly had a lot on her hands. Her life wasn't very easy. She actually suffered a lot. Her life wasn't stable, and even like when she got older in life, even her own partner took their own life. So again, for her, it was a constant struggle for sanity, just to be normal, just to be sane, right? So guys, this poem explores loss as an inevitable part of life. Because let's be honest, guys, and you can't live life without losing, right? We're constantly losing things. People in our lives are going to one day disappear, unfortunately, right? So this poem explores loss as an inevitable part of life, and it's going to happen whether you like it or not. And the speaker considers what it means to experience loss over and over again, and whether it is truly possible to master the experience of loss and grief. So guys, this is very interesting. The author is trying to encourage us to think about, can we overcome the feelings and the dark thoughts that come with loss and grief? Is it possible to come into terms with loss and grief? Is it possible to not suffer when we lose somebody next time? It's very interesting, right? And again, as I said, I like this picture because this is like a visual representation of what it's like when you, samahallah, lose somebody. When you, God forbid, you lose somebody, you feel like this person took a piece of you and they're never going to bring it back. And there's nothing you can do to bring it back. They took a piece of you and it's gone forever, right? So, yes, Muhammad, go ahead.
Yes, doctor, we all will have this feeling sometime, somewhere, losing someone, our mothers, our fathers, one person who we love. But let's be honest, in our Islam, they always teach us to be patient.
Exactly.
And give it to Allah, and think this is the life. It will not change. I mean, Allah said the life will end. There is beginning, there is end. So you will be ready. You will change your mind. Yes, I will lose all. Every day when I wake up, I think in my mind, all these people will die. So I feel comfortable in this part. But even that, when you lose someone, you will be sad.
Exactly.
You cannot be perfect. Whatever you do, whatever you play, it is not easy.
True. Yeah, good point, Muhammad. Exactly. So imagine, guys, for people who have good faith, for example, as Muhammad mentioned, as Muslims, we understand God talks a lot about death. Actually, God reminds us of death constantly in the Holy Quran, right? And we understand as Muslims that when we die, our death is the actually it's the beginning of life for us, because this life is it's temporary, it's so short. I mean, if you're lucky, you get to live 70 to 80 years old. If you're lucky, 70 to 80 years old is nothing compared to the afterlife. So imagine if for Muslims it is hard for us to lose somebody, even though we know that there is heaven, there's paradise, there's hell, and so on and so forth. Yani we understand that there's an afterlife. But imagine for us Muslims who have good faith, Muslims who are truly faithful, it is hard for us to comprehend or to process the emotions that come with death. Imagine other people who don't have that faith. Imagine atheists who don't believe in afterlife, for example. How it must be shocking for them. It must be hell on earth for them. So again, yes, of course, if you are faithful, that might actually help you process the emotions that you're going through when you lose somebody. But imagine, not everyone has faith, right? Not a lot of people don't believe. A lot of people don't believe in religion. They don't have faith. They don't believe like in an afterlife. So imagine how those people feel, right? We sometimes tell ourselves, inshallah, hopefully we will meet in heaven, right? So sometimes you tell yourself, inshallah, we will be dwellers in paradise. I will meet you in heaven. But imagine people who don't believe in such things, right? Imagine people who don't believe in the afterlife. They don't have faith. So again, they will never see that person ever again in their own eyes, right? So guys, I'm going to quickly show you the poem, and then we will try to maybe I'll give you like a short understanding of each stanza. And then maybe we can have just a quick discussion because of the time, okay? So guys, clearly as you can see, and again as Dawood mentioned, this is actually a villanelle poem. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 stanzas. You can see over here, this is the first stanza. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6, okay? All the stanzas, almost all of them have 3 lines, except the last one, it has 4 lines, okay? It's a bit cut over here because of my screen, but I will just make it, okay, I'll show you over here. So here you can see that, yeah, we have three lines in each stanza, except the last one has 4 lines, okay? I'm going to read it very quickly, and then I'll try to explain what she's saying in each stanza, okay? So she says, the art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day, except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster. Places and names, and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I miss them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, a joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master. Not too hard to master, huh? Look at this word here. Though it may look like, write it like disaster. First of all, guys, if you look at the rhyming scheme, right? If you look at the rhyming, I mean, this Elizabeth Bishop, to be honest, I mean, she was a genius to make this poem, to write this poem, because if you look at the rhyming, it's crazy. If you look at lines 1 and 3 of each stanza, they all rhyme. So line number 1 rhymes with line number 3. Same thing with 1, 3, 1, 3. All lines 1 and 3 in each stanza rhyme together. Look, you have master, disaster, fluster, master, faster, disaster, last store, master, vaster, disaster, gesture, master, and disaster. And as Dawood mentioned before, yes, she does use the same word over and over again, but it's still repeating, right? Not only do the first and third lines rhyme, but also look at the second line. SubhanAllah, the second line also rhymes in each stanza. Look at this. Intent, spent, meant, went, continent, evident. It's crazy. Imagine I give you homework and I tell you guys, your homework is to write me a poem, 6 stanzas, and I want every first and third line to rhyme, and I also want every second line to rhyme in each stanza. You'd be like, حرام عليك Mr. Farran, تكفى شوي شوي علينا, we have ظروف. Easy, Mr. Farran. What do you mean you want every 1 and 3 line to rhyme and every second line to rhyme? حرام عليك. Relax. But imagine, Elizabeth Bishop was able to pull this off. She was able to write a beautiful short poem, 6 stanzas, where every first and third line rhyme together, and every second line also rhymes together. Unbelievable, subhanAllah, right? So guys, let's just quickly go through the poem to see if maybe you guys, we can get some more information about the poem. Let's look at the first stanza together, okay? The first stanza says, again, the art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost, that their loss is no disaster. What is she saying over here? The speaker is basically taking the idea of loss and she turns it into an art form. I think Dawood mentioned this a while ago, okay? So if you go to Jarir, for example, if you go to any bookstore, you will find a lot of books that teach you how to do a certain skill. For example, there's a very famous book called The Art of War by a Chinese, I think he's a Chinese philosopher or like a Chinese army general called Sun Tzu. The art of war, the art of self-defense, the art of thinking clearly, right? The art of marriage, the art of getting an A in Mr. Farran's class, things like that, right? So she's trying to take loss and she's trying to turn it into an art form, okay? She tries to convince the reader, and of course herself, that certain things want to be lost. And when they do get lost, it's no big deal. So she's trying to convince us as readers, and she's also trying to convince herself that, you know what? Yani some things are meant to be lost. Some things, and God put them on earth because they're supposed to get lost. And when they do get lost, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, okay? And then the second stanza, she says, lose something every day, except the yani the frustration. Except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent, the art of losing isn't hard to master. So guys, we've all lost something, right? If you think of your lives, we've all lost, keys. Maybe you've lost your wallet. Some of us have even lost our phones. Sometimes you might lose your glasses, your lenses, your husband or wife on purpose, whatever, right? We've all lost things in our lives, right? So she says here, to get better at losing, try losing something every day. Okay, she's being a bit ironic when she says lose something every day, right? It's like she's giving us an order. So she doesn't really mean it, but she's trying to teach you how to basically become better at loss, yeah? So to get better at losing, she says try losing something every day. It's a bit ironic. Accept the frustration. So accept the frustration of loss, of losing your keys or wasting time. It's not hard to master the art of losing things. You can become an expert at losing, okay? And then the third stanza, she says, then practice losing farther, losing faster, places and names, and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. So guys, pay attention. I think Dawood mentioned this a second ago, but pay attention to the things that she is mentioning, right? So in the beginning, she mentions, door keys, keys, and wasting an hour. But now she's mentioning what? She's mentioning things like places and names. So practice losing more and practice losing faster. We're told to consciously lose names and places, which require a bigger effort. They require a bigger mental effort or bigger emotional effort. If I tell you, wallah, to forget your friend or to not talk to your friend for the next 2 months, it might be difficult for you because you constantly think about them. And a degree of emotional distancing. So if I tell you to not think about Mr. Farran, if you hate me, this is easy. But if you care about me or you care about my class, it might be a bit difficult for you because you have to emotionally distance yourself from me, for example, yeah? Still, none of these things will be a big deal. Okay? And then we go to the fourth stanza. The fourth stanza is actually interesting because for the first time in the poem, she mentions a personal item. She says, I lost my mother's watch. Remember, her mother's watch is symbolic. It's a symbol, right? Again, I think Arzak mentioned this, she mentioned this a while back. She said, when someone gives you, like someone you love gives you something, like maybe an accessory. So let's say your grandfather gives you a misbah or gives you gives you a t-shirt or a blanket. Every time you see this misbah, every time you see this item from your grandfather, you will remember him. You can actually even sometimes smell the scent of your grandfather on that item. So here in the fourth stanza, this is the first time she mentions a personal item. So remember, we talked about losing keys, losing time, and then losing names, losing places, and now she mentions losing items which are extremely valuable to you. And you are attached to these items. So I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Oh my god. So now the items she's mentioning, they're actually becoming more personal and they're becoming more significant. Right? The speaker even loses her mother's watch, which was most likely symbolic for love and attachment. She even lost her last 3 houses, not homes. There's a big difference between a house and a home. I think you guys know the difference. It's easy to master the art of losing. That's stanza number 4, huh? Remember, the items she's mentioning are actually getting more significant. They're becoming more important. Let's look at stanza number 5. So what more can she lose? She lost her mother's watch. What more can she lose? And then she says in stanza number 5, I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent, Bismillah, an entire qara, continent. I miss them, but it wasn't a disaster. Oh my God. So lost items, they become even more significant in this stanza. Not only while losing her mother's watch, but losing entire cities, an entire continent. Speaker talks about losing cities, an entire continent. Still not a disaster. And of course, as readers, we ask ourselves, how much more can she endure? Yani, how much more can you lose? You lost all of those items. You lost cities and continents and your mother's watch. What else? What is the ultimate loss? What more can you lose? And then in the last stanza she says, this is where she exposes herself and she says, you know what? I'll show you the ultimate loss. The ultimate loss is what? Even losing you. The joking voice, a gesture I love. I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing is not too hard to master. Though it may look like, write it like disaster. So the ultimate loss is losing another human being. Someone you love. Right? Someone you cherish. Someone that used to sit next to you. Right? Someone who made you feel a certain way, and that person is not there anymore. It's not easy. So the dash that comes at the beginning of the stanza, it makes the stanza look like an afterthought. It's as if she didn't really want to write it. It's like she's only thinking to herself. Here we have the ultimate loss, losing a loved one. Because remember, everything else is like replaceable. Door keys replaceable. Time, okay, you can't get time back, but of course you can work on yourself to spend better time. If you lost your city, you can go to like another city, but you cannot replace a loved one, right? But even with that, the speaker mentions that it may look like disaster, maybe teaching us to not lose ourselves. So maybe the writer is trying to teach us it's not a huge disaster. It is a disaster, but not really a big one, because if you see it as a disaster, you might not be able to continue living your life. You might not be, and you might lose yourself. Imagine if someone loses a friend or like a loved one, and they can't get past that stage. They will never be able to live their lives completely. You understand? If you cannot come to terms with the loss of a friend or a loved one, it might be hard for you to live your life normally. You have to close the wound. You understand? You have to find closure. You have to get some form of closure if you want to continue living your life normally, or else you will lose your sanity, right? And guys, something interesting. Look what she says. If you look at there's a line which she repeats a lot here. The art of losing isn't hard to master. She repeats this, I think, 2 or 3 times in the poem. But look at the end. Look what she says. The art of losing isn't too hard to master. So here she just adds this word and it changes everything. Okay. So guys, let's have this a quick discussion just because of the time. I might keep you like an extra 10 minutes. I do apologize, but just for the sake of getting a better and deeper understanding of this poem, let's just try to have a quick discussion. Okay, guys? So, if you look at the first question, has the speaker mastered the art of losing in your opinion? So guys, do you think, just by reading this poem, do you think this person has mastered the art of losing? Or do you think this person still suffers somehow? What do you think? Okay, Muhammad, go ahead.
Yes, doctor. When she changed the last line, it means that she overcome the sadness and she can overcome the losing. She can handle it.
Okay. Okay. So Muhammad says that she's able to maybe control it. She's able to handle it because she changed the word. Okay. Let's hear from Dawood. Dawood, do you agree?
Actually, in some way, yes, but in the last stanza, she said, I shall have light, it's evident. It shows that she still feels the pain of loss, which means that she did not master.
That's true.
Loss.
Yeah, that's so true, exactly. So in a way, Muhammad, I don't know if you understood this, but in the way when she put the word to, when she added this little word, this little word somehow exposed her. You understand? It's like saying, for example, imagine if you ask me, Muhammad, is your course hard? No, my course is not hard. It's not hard. It's not hard. Then, Mr. Farhan, is it hard? It's not too hard. If I say it's not too hard, it means, wallah, it is a little hard actually, right? If I say it's not hard. Yes.
You are reducing the need. I mean, you are making it easy for me as a listener. That's it. But there's no big change. There's no big difference.
Okay. Yeah.
You are trying to kindness the weight. That's it.
Yes, that makes sense, Mohammed. Yes, you're right, exactly. So here, exactly, she says it's evident the art of losing is not too hard to master. So in a way, this little two over here, because remember back in the previous lines, she says the art of losing isn't hard to master, and then all of a sudden, it's not too hard to master. Again, imagine you ask me. Imagine right now you ask me, Mr. Farhan, is the exam hard? No, it's not hard. It's not hard. Mr. Farhan, tikfa, please be honest. Is the final exam hard? It's not too hard. Mr. Farhan, when you said it's not too hard, wallah, you scared us. When you said it's not too hard, we know that, wallah, it's going to be a bit hard. So here, if I say it's not hard, and then when Ramadan comes and I'm fasting and I have to be honest, I'm like, guys, listen, I know I told you the exam isn't hard, but the truth is it's not too hard. The exam isn't too hard. And when I say that, I am trying to show you that it is a bit hard. So here, when she says it's evident the art of losing isn't too hard to master, she's actually revealing to us and to everyone else that, you know what, it's super hard. She's not over it. Because she actually wrote a poem about it. And she's still thinking about this loss. And the proof is she actually wrote a poem. She wrote an entire poem about loss and about this person. And that's why it comes at the very end. And she clearly, again, if you look at this poem objectively, she really hasn't mastered the art of losing. Okay? Even though she's trying to convince us. Okay? Now the second question is a bit easy. I'm not going to ask you guys, but again, do you sense any pain in the speaker's voice? Taban, there is a lot of pain everywhere in the poem. If you look at the poem carefully, there is pain in almost every single stanza because she mentions losing something in every single stanza. She mentions losing door keys, losing hours, losing names, losing places, and of course in the last three stanzas, taban, they get even worse. Imagine losing her mother's watch. Her mother's watch, it was symbolic. It was like the only item she had that reminded her of her mother. And imagine losing that, right? So again and again in each stanza she mentions losing certain items, certain things. And then of course at the very end she mentions losing her loved one. So of course the pain is everywhere. So pain is everywhere in this poem, okay? Especially at the very end when she says it's not too hard to master, right? How does this poem build up in intensity, in your opinion? Again, for the sake of time, I'm going to go back to what Dawood said. If you remember at the beginning, before I read the poem, Dawood said that the poem starts off by losing insignificant things, like door keys and wasting your time or wasting hours, and then of course the poem ends with losing an entire human being, especially a loved one. So of course, if you look at the question, how does this poem build up in intensity? The poem becomes more intense, it becomes more interesting, right? As you move on, because the writer mentions more important things as you move on through the poem, right? Number 4 says, what themes can we extract? So guys, what is this poem all about? Very quickly, just give me 1 or 2 words. What is this poem all about? What do you think this poem is about? Okay, Muhammad, yes?
Struggling with sadness.
Yeah, struggling with sadness, exactly, yes. This poem could be about loss, could be about dealing with loss, could be about struggling on how to overcome or how to process emotions when you lose somebody or something. Yeah, exactly, right? And it's not easy, by the way. As I said, it's not easy. How do you deal with the loss of somebody? Right? Again, if you're religious, it might be easier for you because we have faith, you have faith, and we have an afterlife. But imagine someone whose faith is not that strong. Imagine someone who doesn't believe in religion, for example, or someone who doesn't have faith. That's very, very hard for them to process those emotions. You have someone sitting next to you one day, and then the next day they're not there anymore. Right? It's hard to imagine. Right? So this poem could be about pain. This poem could be about loss. This poem could be about dealing with loss. This poem could be about overcoming, issues related to people and loss and so on. So there are many things you can talk about. Number 5 says, is it possible for us to relate to this poem? So guys, do you think it is possible for us as people to relate to this poem? Dawood, yes, what do you think?
Of course, because we all have to lose something at some point in our
Exactly.
lives.
Exactly, yes. Even if you haven't experienced loss, as Dawood said, it's inevitable. It's going to happen whether you like it or not, right? Unfortunately, this is part of life, right? So we've all experienced loss in some shape or form, whether it's losing a friend or like a relative, or losing an item which was important to you. But we've all experienced some form of loss. So obviously, this poem we can easily like relate to this poem. Like when it comes to Michael Obi and Dead Man's Path, maybe it was hard for us to relate to Michael Obi because we were never we were like never in his shoes. We never had a fight with villagers and the priest, right? But with a poem like this, I think it's easy for most of us, if not all of us, to relate to this poem because we've all experienced some form of loss. Even people who lose pets, for example, forget human beings. If you have a pet, has anyone here lost a pet? Has anyone had a cat or a dog or like a bird, and then that animal passed away? Has anyone had a pet pass away or die? Nobody? Okay, great. So again, for example, if you know somebody who's had a pet, and that pet dies, you will see that the people, they get distraught, and they tell you, "Allah, this dog or this cat or this bird was part of my family," and it's hard. I mean, it was my friend. I loved this animal so much, but now I feel empty from inside. I feel like someone took a piece of my heart, right? The next question says, what would be the best or healthiest way to cope with the loss of a loved one? I will keep this question to you. There's no right or wrong answers. So just think about it by yourself. What would be the best way to maybe cope with the loss of a loved one? My other section told some people said maybe therapy, maybe surrounding yourself with positive people, maybe having a good support system, or having close friends next to you, whatever, right? So again, we don't really have a right or wrong answer. Different people are going to deal with loss in different ways. Okay, someone said keeping a journal, maybe putting your thoughts down on paper, right? Or talking to a therapist, whatever. So there are different ways to deal with loss. Again, whatever answer you mentioned is also a genuine answer. Is also like a possible answer, right? And then it says the second last question says, compare the first verse, the art of losing isn't hard to master, with the second last verse in the last stanza, the art of losing is not too hard to master. Is there a difference? Yes, of course there's a big difference. If I go back to the poem over here, you will see that she says in the beginning, the art of losing isn't hard to master. In the very beginning, she mentions this again in the second stanza, the art of losing isn't hard to master. Again in the fourth stanza, the art of losing isn't hard to master. It's exactly the same sentence. Copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. And then at the very end, she says the art of losing is not too hard to master. Just by putting the word "too," again, as I told Muhammad and the rest of you, this exposes her, and this shows us that she hasn't like really accepted the art of losing. Like the wound in her heart is still open. She is unable to actually maybe forget this person, right? So in a way, she hasn't truly mastered the art of losing, even though she's trying to convince us to master the art of losing, right? And she's actually encouraging us to lose things, right? And again, the last one is a personal question. Again, I'll leave it up to you, but it says, is it necessary to master the art of losing to get through life? It's a personal question. Some people might say yes. Some people might say no. Again, I mean, if I had to answer this question personally, I think it's very important for you to master the art of losing if you wish to survive, if you wish to live, if you wish to remain sane. I know it's not easy, but think about it. If you cannot move on from the loss of a human being or a person in your life, it will be very hard for you to go back to your work normally. It will be very hard for you to be motivated to live. It will be very hard for you to get on with your daily activities and daily life and responsibilities. So again, I think death is a beautiful reminder that we are not going to be here forever. And death, every time someone dies in your family or like your friends or like in your inner circle, it is just a reminder for you to take advantage of the time you have, to make more use of your time, to put your time to good use, because we're not staying on this planet forever. There will come a time when we will have to leave this planet, and when people around us die, their death only serves as a reminder for us to make the most of our time, to do the best we can, to live a fulfilling life, to live a life that is true to ourselves, to accomplish something in our lives, to achieve something in our lives. You understand? That's the way I see it. Again, I'm not claiming that dealing with loss is easy. I know from personal experience that loss is not easy whatsoever. Yes, Dawood.
pain and I mean, lost is basically being, in pain. So, but pain and love are actually faces of the same coin. The bigger the love you hold for someone or something, the more painful it is going to be when you lose it.
Exactly.
So, to master lost is equivalent to actually being emotionless or heartless.
Beautiful. I love that, Dawood. Beautiful. I love that. That's so true. I'm going to clap for you, Dawood. This was amazing. Good job, mashallah. I love that, Dawood. Guys, imagine if, again, as Dawood said, if you truly want to master the art of losing, then don't love anybody. Don't have feelings for anybody. Because when you do that, when people die around you, adi, right? You don't really care. So, as Dawood said, the love and death or love and pain are two different sides of the same coin. You cannot, the more you love, the more painful it's going to be when you separate, or when the person leaves, right? The only way to protect yourself is to not love anybody, and that's not the right way to live life. You cannot live your life without loving people, or like having family members or relatives or people you care about. The only way to truly love life, or the only way to truly live life to the fullest, is to experience both the pleasures of love and the pain of death. That's the only way to live life fully. Because you cannot protect yourself from everything. You cannot just live your life without caring about people, without loving other people. It's almost impossible. So with great love comes great pain. Okay? It sounds like a quote from Spider-Man, but anyway. With great love comes great pain, right? So yeah, beautifully said, Dawood. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, guys, that's it. That's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And guys, again, if you download my notes, I'll give you some extra links, which will hopefully help you, give you more and a deeper understanding of the poem. Your homework is taban to continue reading your chosen book, and please prepare. The next time I see you, inshallah, on Monday, we will cover the second and the last poem we have this semester, which is Stopping by Woods. And of course, guys, we will have our second quiz. For the quiz, of course, I will cover with you. I will ask you about Up From Slavery, the autobiography, Up From Slavery. Only the first 5 pages, or if you download my notes, you can just use my notes. Yeah, so I will ask you about Up From Slavery and today's poem, One Art, only. Most of the quiz is going to be multiple choice, but of course I will have some short answers as well. And yeah, just make sure you study, guys, and if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. Thank you guys so much. I do apologize for coming late to class, and I do apologize for keeping you a bit over time. I did record this session, so I will stop recording now. So if you want to, if you did fall asleep, or if you did daydream, or if you were busy, for example, while I was talking or teaching today, you can go back and watch the video. I will post the video on YouTube, inshallah, okay?